back to a brand new episode of Virtual Coffee. My name is Alexa Collier, and on this podcast, we showcase small and local businesses from around the world. Now, with me today is Sarah. She is the founder and owner of Cozy and Kind Home. Sarah hand makes cozy and kind home decor items, and her products are made with recycled and repurposed materials. 10% of her proceeds also go to foster care support. Now, on this episode, Sarah shares her inspiration behind starting her business and her tips and tricks for balancing your own business with life and family. Now, before we hear from Sarah, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. If you could leave a rating and review for Virtual Coffee on Spotify and the Apple Podcasts app, that's greatly appreciated. Helps others discover the podcast and then discover the businesses and the people that we feature. You can follow along Virtual Coffee on Instagram, Facebook, all the social medias. It's at Virtual Coffee Podcast. Again, thanks so much for tuning in, and now let's hear from Sarah. Welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for being on Virtual Coffee.
Thanks for having me.
Let's dive into it. I'd love for you to just first give the audience a brief intro of who you are and your business, and then we can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Sarah Nye. I'm the owner of Cozy and Kind Home, and I make a variety of upcycled and handmade home decor and gifts.
Everything you make is just so cute and adorable, and you want to put it in your home. I'm just looking at your Instagram feed now. Where did the idea for Cozy and Kind Home come from? Was this a hobby that you turned into a business? Did you, start out with wanting it to become a business? What's the origin of Cozy and Kind?
Yeah, so when I started this, and I can talk a little bit about my backstory if you want a bit more than too, but it was important to me to kind of have a core philosophy behind what I was doing. So it did just start as literally making one little wonky gnome in my kitchen with my kids during COVID, and it built from there. So it started doing something fun, and when I actually made the decision, hey, maybe I can turn this into something more, it was important to kind of think on what I wanted that to be and what kind of that core framework was going to be for me. And as part of that, I think, or always hope at least, like home should be two things, cozy and kind, hence the name derivative, right? So the cozy part is simple. I think every home should make you feel comfortable and at ease and just kind of surrounded in warmth and love. And my hope is that my little handmade items now help to add maybe just a little tiny bit of that cozy factor to wherever they're headed. But more importantly, on the kind side, it's a bit more multifaceted. So like teaching our children to be kind in our house is pretty paramount. But as cozy as we can make our own homes, right? Many are still not in as fortunate a situation. So it was important to me starting out to know that a portion of our shop profits are going to be donated monthly. And I picked a special charity that aims to make life a little more cozy and kind for children in foster care. And that was just kind of important to me starting out. And that's been consistent over the last couple of years. And then one more aspect of the kind part, when I kind of created the initial framework for it, was going beyond just being kind to each other, but also about being kind to this pretty planet that we get to live on. So I love upcycling as much as I can. I love giving new life to old things and saving materials from a landfill. So a big part of that, for example, all of our gnome hats are upcycled, made using repurposed materials like old sweaters and vintage fabrics, and the beards are from fur vests or coats or rugs even, and all the filling in our stuffed animals is recycled polyfill from old pillows and just things like that. So I kind of love that, they're not only uniquely one of a kind, but it was important to me that they're also being kind to this planet, and that we're being cognizant of the footprint that we're leaving here in all of this.
I love it. Thank you for sharing all that. And I really love that you have multiple whys behind Cozy and Kind Home. And I think that showcases that you don't have to pick just one lane. You know what I mean? Like you have the theme of cozy and kind, but you have multiple purposes and reasons behind that encompass who you are and your passions and what you want to give back to the world. I think that's just an important note for business owners and just folks listening in general, that you can combine a lot of areas of who you are into a thing, right? And in this case, it's your business and your products, but you don't have to just have one aspect. You can incorporate a lot. And I love that you shared that story. I'd love to give folks who are listening, before we dive into some other questions I'm curious about of kind of how Cozy and Kind Home came to be. Can you help our listeners who may not have gone to your Instagram page yet or your storefront, just describe some of the products you sell? I know you mentioned some already, but what can folks expect when they go to your storefront, when they go to your page?
Sure. So it started with, and I still make a ton of them, but my core focus initially was upcycled gnomes. As I mentioned, reusing some of the materials to make them. So I still sell a lot of gnomes, but I also do seasonal garlands. Got very into chunky knit stuffed animals that I finger knit now this year. I make like faux knit plants and macrame cacti, magnets, ornaments, pumpkins. It's like really whatever kind of brings me that creative joy that day. I feel like I've kept expanding on, if it's soft and cozy or upcycled, I'm all over it.
That's awesome. I love that upcycle piece. Were you always a crafter? Was this always, something you enjoyed doing?
Yes. So I was always very into arts and crafts growing up. I feel like that kind of got stifled a little bit as I became an adult. So a little backstory on me, I guess. I worked in the corporate world after graduating college for about 15 years. I ran financial operations for a consulting arm of a healthcare IT company. So I kind of did that fast-paced corporate culture thing for a long time, even when my kids were little, and that's hard. So I hit a point in 2019 where, to be honest, I remember I went to too many funerals that year, and just kind of clicked for me that life is far too short to just kind of be living for the weekends and not finding that joy in every single day. And I had kind of, my own personal little epiphany, and I was and am obviously still very fortunate and blessed that my husband, who's my biggest supporter, he was on board with making a big change to leave that corporate world, and kind of slow life down for our family and myself and my kids that year. And when a few months later, it was 2020, right? And COVID hit, and I was so glad to have made that change and be able to be home with them. But like everyone that year, we were always looking for creative ways to help keep ourselves busy and kind of keep our minds right at home, right? And my creative juices that I always had as a kid, but I felt, maybe were a tad stifled, if you will, from the corporate world for a while, just all really flowed back. And I'll just say we got pretty crafty in our house that year. So yeah, I made my first little gnome at the kitchen island with my kids from materials we already had in the house, like a sock, an old sweater, some rice. And that's literally where it all started, and then just couldn't stop after that.
That's a beautiful backstory. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of us, myself included, can relate to that of whatever way you experience that of, am I doing what fulfills me? Do I want to keep doing this? And just having those checks, every once in a while can be really beneficial. And it's really cool to see what came out of your epiphany, which is Cozy and Kind Home. That's a really great backstory. I love hearing why someone started their business and how they got into it. So once you kind of started, like you mentioned, getting back into crafting and creating these products to sell, how did you then go to business mode? I'm always interested in not only the why behind the business and what motivated folks to begin down that path, but then how did you go into the logistics, right? Because as I'm sure you know, a business is way more than just building the product or having the story behind it. It's a lot of logistics in there to get from your hands to the customer. What were some of those steps like? Did you find it harder, easier than you thought? Just tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I started just doing it for fun and, a little bit of sanity in there. And my husband says to me, probably when I had about, 20 of them on the counter at that time, like, what are you going to do with all of those?
Yeah.
He was like, you should sell them. And I'm thinking, that's bananas. Like, nobody wants these wonky little things. Like, I'm just having fun. So I started to think more about it though, and started doing research on how would I open an Etsy shop. Because I started knowing I love Etsy. I love shopping handmade and buying handmade. And so I was already a big Etsy fan. So I did some research on how I would actually go about opening an Etsy shop. And eventually I figured, why not give it a try? Like if I sell a few for the holidays, it could be fun. And, as probably most small businesses, my friends and family were, the first couple ones to order from me. And, that just means the world to you, right? How supportive everyone is when you're trying to get started on something. And I remember thinking like, wow, if I just sell 20, it will make my little shop seem real and reputable. And sometimes that's the hardest part about getting started, I think, for a lot of people. And it was for me, just having that confidence there. And I don't know, here we are a few years later, and I've made literally thousands. And
Wow. What do you find is the most challenging piece? I know I have my answer for the podcast, but what do you find? What's that piece where maybe you're like, darn, this is hard. I just don't want to do this particular aspect of running this business.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a challenge. So it's absolutely super rewarding, right? From a personal standpoint, but it is a challenge. It's a hustle. No matter what line of business you're in with it, when you own your own small business, it's a hustle, and there's ups and downs. I personally love the creating aspect of it. Like I want to be at my desk making and creating all the time, because that's what brings me joy. The other aspects of it, I could maybe pass on to someone else if that was ever an option. You have to take
Right.
the photos and create the listings, and then you have the whole, business side of it and managing the taxes and the, all of the financials behind it. And it's just a lot of work because you're running every side of it. And I do actually really like the business side of it because I have a business management background, and I will nerd out in Excel and see look year over year. So I don't mind that aspect of it. I'd rather be creating, but I don't mind it. But the whole social media side of it as well, you have to put in a lot of time to get your work out there and, get people exposed to it beyond just, your local community and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's a hustle, and there are days when you want to do certain aspects and not do others, but then you realize, hey, I'm still the one doing all the
I can relate to all of that. I think we must be similar, at least in certain ways, because I agree. Like with the podcast, I love this, right? Like talking to business owners, doing the interviews, and then it's the social media marketing and the editing of the episodes. Those are just the two aspects. I'm like, I wish I could hire someone to do those things. So I totally relate. I think people really don't understand how tedious and difficult, especially the social media aspect is. Like you mentioned, even taking product photos and posting even on Etsy, it takes a lot and it matters. It really matters. And until you try to succeed in that or dip your toe into it, I don't think most folks understand how much effort and thought needs to go behind it. So I completely relate to your answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be good. I'm like, okay, I'll make something. I'm going to take the pictures today to get the ball rolling. I'll take all the pictures, and then I'm like, now I have to edit them all, like you said.
Yeah.
Have to, create a listing, and then I have to post them to Instagram and hype it up, and, and sometimes it's a little exhausting on that side, but it is so worth it because I find when I stay on top of it and I do that, and let's say I go on a streak and I post every day, I get more sales that way. But then I'll go, I'll become very busy I had in-person events the last couple of weekends. So like craft shows and vendor events and things like that. So they take a ton of prep work to get ready for, and I'm kind of off of my phone and the computer for a while, and I haven't posted. And then, you do see the impact that all of that has on it for sure.
100%. And I agree. It is rewarding getting to the end stage. It's just getting there. That's what's the hard part. No, awesome. I think a lot of people can relate to that. I've heard similar answers from other business owners. And kind of on that same topic, what advice would you have for others who are either on the path to starting their own business or have their own small business? What kind of pieces of advice immediately come to mind as you reflect on your own journey?
My number one thing I'm a huge advocate for is community over competition. And in the small business world, you hear that a lot. So I'm sure you've heard the statement, comparison is the biggest thief of joy. And it's just so, so true. My advice is to always just do you, like do what brings you joy and stay true to that. It's so easy, especially when you're starting to look around and worry about how many other businesses there are that are making similar things and how much further they might be or appear to be along in their journey, and imposter syndrome can really kick in, for a lot of us, and you just have to kick it out. Like there's such a huge, amazing community of creators and makers and artisans and artists and small business owners out there. And we're all just in this hustle game trying to make something out of things that bring us joy. And I think that we can really tap into each other in a collaborative and a supportive way. So I say, don't be afraid to ask another small business owner a question. It's such a great community, really, really is. And I've received nothing but just the best support from the small business community, which I think is just a really cool thing.
I felt similar, I guess, good vibes or collaboration amongst the small business community. I mean, everyone I've ever interacted with is just so open and, like you said, willing to help and support one another. And to your point, there's really room for everyone, right? Every product is slightly different. Every owner is slightly different. Every business is slightly different. And to your point, there's no need to compete in a harsh way, right? Some competition, I'm sure, is healthy, but I understand your point of not being afraid to collaborate and leverage the community that you're a part of and bring your own value to the community. So yeah, I completely agree. Where are you hoping to take Cozy and Kind home? Any future new products you're ideating on or goals for the business? Yeah, where are you hoping to eventually take the business?
Yeah, so I'm really just focused on kind of keeping this kind of organic growth going if I can.
Mm-hmm.
I've really found that. So I've joined 3 retail locations locally in boutiques. And I really just love having those genuine small business connections in different towns. And so I'm always looking for more opportunities for collaboration there, maybe beyond locally. I'd love to make connections, see my products in boutiques across the country that I can ship to, who knows where that'll go. But that's kind of one aspect I've really enjoyed, and I'm looking to grow the retail side of it. Yeah, I mean, I like to continually learn new skills. Like each year I try to add on and kind of take the time to, I guess, invest in myself and learn a new technique, like whether it's macrame or embroidery or just improving my sewing and things like that. There's always a lot of ideas in my head. I just like to try new things, see what might stick and what I might enjoy doing and what I might be able to add to the shop each year. It's kind of an ever evolving thing in my head.
I'm sure. And how do you come up with new product ideas? Like, is it random inspiration? Do you have a process? What's that like? And do you like test out how you make them? Just highlight some of that process for us.
Yeah, sure. So the most recent thing that I've done this year is the finger knitting. And I think most people get started like making blankets with them, and then I just knew immediately when I see these stuffed animals. Like my kids are stuffed animal obsessed, and I was as a child, and I will still squeal at a cute little stuffed animal. So I'm like definitely want to make those. So I watched some YouTube videos, and I just kind of taught myself the core techniques, and then I decided I want to create my own designs for what animals I want to do. So I just did last week. I was like, oh, I want to do like a mallard duck. So I was trying that, and I made my first one, and I call it like my beta, and I just sold him at my craft show this past weekend because like to me he wasn't quite good enough to put out there on Etsy yet. He was still in process or in progress for how I want the final product to turn out. So but yeah, that's kind of how I go about doing it. And I have a sheep in my head right now that I want to give a try, and it's just a matter of finding the time to sit down and do it and work through the process.
Sounds really fun. Yeah, I'd love to see like those products from initial idea to the end. That'd be a cool process to see.
I actually keep that first little wonky gnome I referenced from my island. I keep him, and he comes out in my Christmas bin every year, and I look at laugh like at how bad it looks compared to now, but it's such a good reminder of where you start and where you can get to. So I really like having him as a reference.
That's awesome. That's really cute. I love that he's just in the bin and pops out every year. How is running your own small business? I'm assuming from your home, right now?
Yes, I have an office in quotation marks. I took over the playroom. The kids are older and have less toys, so the playroom has become my office.
Nice. And how is running a business and balancing every other aspect of your life? And I know you mentioned right in your origin story, like the reason Cozy and Kind Home came to be was that kind of epiphany of corporate world, is that really what I want to be doing? How to live in the moment. So how do you keep that mindset going when you are the business, right? I can imagine that can be difficult when I'm sure there's things you can be doing 24/7 to benefit the business. So how do you put those maybe boundaries in play so that you have the balance that you want to achieve?
Yeah, great question. It absolutely can be a tricky thing for sure, having that balance, because like you said, it's always on your mind. Everything you have to do surrounding the business 24/7, and there is always something that could be done. And I love sitting at my desk and, creating, and then all the other things that I have to do that are secondary to that, sitting on my mind throughout the day when I'm doing other things with the kids. My way, I always kind of try to, I mean, it's obvious to say prioritize your family and yourself. I know that I have to take care of myself in order to put my best version of myself out to the world and to help take care of my family and others. But I think beyond that, I try to remind myself pretty frequently that I'm never going to look back and regret the quality time that I spend with my family. So I will look back and regret, the times where I decide to work extra hours and, not partake in the time with them. So you're never going to look back and regret the quality time you spend with your family. So always prioritize that. And then I just, I think finding what brings you joy and finding a way to do that as much as possible. One small thing that might bring you joy, whether it's, through your work or through your family, whatever that is for you, just kind of seek it out every single day. And it sounds simple, I guess, but it's kind of a good mantra I've found pretty effective for me to help kind of ground me and make sure that I keep that balance.
That's great advice for anyone, whether you have a business or not. It sounds like you really understand your personal priorities and you do your best to stick to that, right? When possible. I appreciate that. And I think life is really all about that balance. And sometimes it's really, really hard to achieve the right balance. And sometimes it's easy. And it's just kind of going with that flow and, just to your point, doing your best to stick to your priorities and that balance that you want to achieve. Yeah, that's great advice. Logistics of your products in your storefront, I'd love to make sure the audience knows where you're able to ship and deliver your products. And then also would love for you to shout out those retail stores you mentioned.
Yeah, that would be great. So I ship to anywhere in the United States right now from the Etsy platform. That's my primary platform where you can get my things if you're not local to me. I am in a few local boutiques, so I'll give those a little shout out here. What I love the most about this kind of side of it is they're all women owned, all great small business advocates. To me is just a beautiful thing. So the first one you can find my local goodies in is called Pression Street Arcade. They have a Lancaster, Pennsylvania and a Mannheim location. And it's just a fun place to shop in general. It's a collection of small business makers, vintage finds, curated vibey items. It's really so much fun. I'm also at Cranberry Street Boutique in Royersford, Pennsylvania. It's an adorable little gift shop. They actually recently just expanded to have a whole Makers on Main side filled with local small businesses and artists. We also do really fun DIY workshops there. So I teach people how to make gnomes and plants and things like that. So we always have a blast with that. And then last but not at all least, I have a section in Terra Cove Spa in Skippack, Pennsylvania. This place is awesome. It's actually an organic spa and a yoga studio and also a small business boutique. So they have like sustainable fashion and beauty, and just goes right along with the whole upcycling thing. And their owner is a former foster youth, which, goes along with my core kind of foundation and mission in the beginning. So it's such an awesome vibe. I just adore being part of these shops. Their owners are really my kind of people. I've been really fortunate in that space to be part of what they're doing in their communities. And so I really love that whole side of it.
It's really exciting to get into a storefront and be able to walk into a shop and see your product there that folks can buy and purchase in person. That's a really big accomplishment. So congrats on that. What are your thoughts on Etsy? I don't know. I don't know if advice is the right word, but maybe just curious your perspectives on working with Etsy that maybe other small business owners could, kind of take some good information or tips and tricks from you on it.
Yeah, so I've had a really great experience with Etsy so far. I think there's a lot on the really good side, and I know that there are some complaints from people as well. I think it's absolutely the best platform out there to go to a broader scale to get visibility to the items that you make on a handmade level across the United States, across the world. I don't ship internationally yet just because I haven't figured all of that out yet from a tax and shipping standpoint. I do think it's a really great platform for that. The trickiest thing, like I mentioned, is kind of getting those first 20 sales if you're starting out, so that when people go to your page and they see, oh, they're reputable, right? They have made sales, they have reviews. Reviews are so critical for Etsy. I always look at whether you're shopping on Etsy or Amazon or everywhere, right? Everyone's looking at, what are you, 4 stars, 5 stars? What are people saying about this specific item and product that I bought? So getting customers to be delighted with your work so that they want to go in and leave a review is so important if you're selling on that platform.
How did you get to that first 20? I know you mentioned friends and family. Was that really it? Or did you have any good tactics that others could maybe take away who are just starting their Etsy shop?
I don't know. For me, it was really, I have a super supportive friends and family network. And I do think they got me to my first 20, maybe not to my first 100, but once you put that out there, it's also so important to have, it's this SEO, right? The search engine optimization, the keywords that you use, whether it's in your title and they give you additional sections to put in, anything you can think of that someone that might be searching for might think or say or type in to that search bar. You want to make sure those words are captured for the item that you're trying to sell. So I think it's really important to give that a lot of thought and research too, because there's some good resources out there to kind of figure out how to best sell your product, whatever that product is, and how to kind of market it on the Etsy platform. So yeah, I would say, give it a shot and do your research in terms of that side of it.
Yeah, those are great points. And the fact that just while you were saying about like the search engine optimization, how it's all an experiment too. Like, don't be afraid to, I'm sure you're probably editing them, changing them, depending on the success rate of the keywords you put in and all the things that you can edit on a posting. So just for folks to know that that's a ever evolving process and product listing on Etsy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Sarah, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. I think those were all my main questions, and I think we covered a lot of good foundation of you in the business. And I always say to guests that you're welcome back on anytime to go, into a deeper topic or a different topic related to your business. But again, thank you so much for being on. And really, the last thing I love to end all my episodes with is, in this moment, what would you say your proudest accomplishment is? And it's more that first thing that pops into your mind, whether it's related to your business or not. What is your proudest accomplishment so far?
Oh gosh. So wow, I am very proud of building up Cozy and Kind Home, but it does not even remotely come close because I have to see my kids. If I'm good at one thing in this world, it's being a mom. And maybe not every day, I lose my patience and I will yell and go through all the difficult parenting things like the rest of them, but because I'm human. But it was what I am meant to do here, and I put everything into it, and I don't know, I think I'm raising three pretty cool little humans. So yeah, I'd have to say that.
I love that. And congrats on everything you've achieved so far with your business and then in just your life in general. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And before we hop off, where can people find you and your business? Just shout out social medias, websites, anything you want to shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say go to Instagram first. If you're on Instagram, I'm at Cozy and Kind Home. And then on Etsy, I'm same, Cozy and Kind Home, all one word, no periods or anything in between. So yeah, that's the best way to find me. And as a thank you for having me on today, and for anyone that listens, I'd love to give you 15% off everything in my Etsy shop. So you can use the code podcast15 if you want to go on there and check it out, just as a little thank you.
Beautiful. And thank you so much. Perfect time for the holidays. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll put that in the description as well in case folks want to copy it in there. But again, Sarah, thank you so much for being on Virtual Coffee. I really appreciate it.
It was so nice chatting with you, Alexa. Thank you so much.